As the saying goes from that great sage of wisdom known as Batman, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Actually, it was Harvey Dent that said that first, and Batman stole it from him. Anyhow, that seems to be the case for a man named King Saul. We're continuing with our series on three kings and the prophet. We're heading into 1 Samuel chapter 14. And just to recap where we're at, so Saul started well, but he's not finishing well, right? Saul has had his legacy and dynasty taken from him as a result of unrepentant sin. And his sin was to choose to trust his own judgments over the will and command of God, right? He thought that, well, God's way isn't working for me, so I'm going to do it my own way. Didn't end well. Anytime we are faced with a clear directive and statute of God, and we opt to do our own thing instead, we opt to go our own way instead, no matter how many logical gymnastics we do, no matter how we convince ourselves, or on what basis we convince ourselves to do so, we will regret it. If we go our own way instead of God's way, we will regret it every single time. And that's why chapter 13 of 1 Samuel ends on a cliffhanger, right? With Israel in dire straits and completely a hopeless situation, because Saul thought that he would be better off doing things his own way rather than obeying the command of the Lord. And the result of doing things his own way is that things are now worse than ever. They're in a horrible situation, right? Saul's army, if you remember, started out at around 330,000 men. At the beginning of chapter 13, it was 3,000 men. And now he's down to 600 men in his army in the face of countless thousands of Philistines. We don't know the number exactly because the Bible just says that there were more Philistine foot soldiers than there were grains of sand on the beach. So quite a few, quite a few Philistines. And that's not including the 3,000 iron chariots that they had and the 6,000 cavalry horsemen. So basically the Philistines have all the advantages here. They were in a position of strength. And so clearly, if Israel's going to find its salvation from this hopeless situation that they are in, deliverance is going to have to come from a source other than King Saul, right? Only by miraculous means can they hope to get out of this bad situation. By the power of God. Only by the power of God can Israel be saved. And Saul has already shown his lack of faith in God. Right? That was what chapter 13 was about. Saul showed that he does not have much faith in the God of heaven, in the God of the universe. And so we know that faith as small as a mustard seed, right, can move mountains. But Saul doesn't even have that much faith in God, it seems. His faith is in his own martial might, in his own natural and conventional abilities. And that's not going to do him any good when there's arguably over 100,000 Philistines against his 600 Israelites. It's just not working out too well. But we see, wedged in between two chapters about King Saul's foolishness and unfaithfulness, we see that at least somebody has at least a tiny seed of faith. A tiny mustard seed of faith at the very least, if not a full avocado seed, as we will see. And that would be Jonathan, right, the firstborn son of King Saul, who would have become king himself one day if not for his father's foolishness and rebellion. And that just goes to show that our sins always affect other people. It's never just us who deal with the consequences of our actions. It's never just us. There is no, well, I'm not hurting anybody else, so I can keep on doing what I'm doing. It doesn't work that way. Okay, no matter how we convince ourselves, there is no such thing as a victimless sin. I'll just say that. Everything you do, private or public, affects other people, whether it is indirectly or directly, it affects other people, right? Just as an example, pornography addicts convince themselves all the time that, well, what I do in private isn't hurting anybody else. Well, it's hurting the girls on that screen who are being used and abused for your pleasure. So, and that's just one example, but there is no such thing as a sin that does not affect somebody else. Okay? There's no such thing. Just suffice it to say. Anyway, so, and this is especially true when you have a family, right? If I make a mistake as a father and a husband, if I make a mistake, if I commit a crime, or heaven forbid I commit adultery, or develop a gambling problem or a drinking problem, whatever that mistake may be, it is my family that pays the price ultimately for my decisions, right? I ruined their lives, not just my own. And so so the responsibility is on me not to do that, not to mess up in a big way that completely wrecks my family. So likewise, it is Saul's, excuse me, likewise, Saul's unfaithfulness and rebellion didn't just destroy his own life and legacy. It destroyed his family's future as well. It destroyed the future of his son and his daughters. It messed up his whole dynasty, his whole legacy. But let's get a look at Jonathan's triumph of faith here. We're beginning in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 1. Now the day came that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who was carrying his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the Philistine garrison that is on the other side." But he did not tell his father. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah, under the pomegranate tree that is in Migron. And the people who were with him numbered about 600 men. And Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the priest of the Lord at Shiloh, was wearing an ephod, and the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Now between the gorges by which Jonathan sought to cross over to the Philistines' garrison, there was a rocky crag on one side, and there was a rocky crag on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other was Sina. The one crag rose on the north opposite of Michmash, and the other on the south opposite Geba. And Jonathan said to the young man who was carrying his armor, "Come and let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will work for us, because the Lord is not limited to saving by many or by few." Now, you gotta love this guy. Okay, so Jonathan sneaks out of the camp with his armor bearer. He's like a rebellious teen sneaking out of the house, right? But he doesn't want his father or anybody else to know what he's doing, what he's up to. And why is that? Well, it's because he's got a bold plan in mind, right? That he's about to move on, and he knows that no one else will approve of his audacity, right? If he tells anyone what he's up to, they'll try to stop him, and so he just doesn't tell them. He doesn't want to deal with the skeptics, okay? Doesn't want anybody to rain on his parade. So, and just as a note, if you step out in faith and or follow the leading of God, the masses will call you crazy. I mean, most people will call you nuts, even in the church, if you try to step out in faith. It's happened to me many times, and unfortunately, I have caved to the pressure more than I care to admit. But people will not approve of anything bold and audacious. They just won't. All right, set aside. I mean, just stay inside the lines. Stay inside the box where it's safe. Just don't step out in faith. It's uncomfortable out there. So Jonathan is about to get a bit uncomfortable. He's about to step out of the box a bit. Right? He's decided beforehand that he's not going to let anyone talk him out of his act of faith. This isn't pride or arrogance talking. He's stepping out in faith. He's not going to let anyone talk him out of his act of faith. Okay? So don't misunderstand. He is not stepping out as a rebellious teen trying to get into trouble and not want anyone to know. No, he's stepping out in faith. He's trying to be faithful to the Lord, and he's not going to let anyone stop him from doing so. Okay, his ultimate loyalty is to the Lord. So while his father Saul is inert, not doing anything, right, refusing to take action because again he is lacking in faith, so all he has left is fear. Right, Jonathan is going to take action while Saul is doing nothing. Saul is in fear. He's just lounging under the pomegranate tree, just waiting for something to happen. And Jonathan's taking action, not out of fear or impatience or rebellion, but out of faith. He could not be more different from his father in this case. And I love what Jonathan says to his armor bearer here in verse 6. He says, "Perhaps the Lord will work for us, because the Lord is not limited to saving by many or by few." Faith of a mustard seed, right? An outright admission that the Lord has no limits. Okay, in Saul's rise to power, God saved by many, right? He miraculously handed Saul 330,000 men for his army to fight the battle and win. So the Lord saved by many in that case. But God could have won that battle without those numbers Jonathan understands that, and Jonathan's faith tells him, well, if the Lord wills it, he can make me worth 330,000 men all by myself. All right, so that's the intense mindset that Jonathan's got walking into battle, okay? It's Jonathan and his armor bearer against countless thousands of Philistines, and Jonathan thinks, those poor Philistines have no chance. Right, that is an intense mindset of faith. But note that he says, perhaps the Lord will work with us or work for us. So he's not so arrogant as to say or to claim that he knows and understands the immutable will of God. He's stepping out in faith, but he's letting the Lord lead, not the other way around. He's not arrogantly saying that the Lord will do what I want him to do. He's saying perhaps the Lord will bless me if I step out in faith, if I trust in him. Now, there are certain areas in Scripture that are abundantly clear about God's expectations of us, our morals, our behavior, etc., etc., but sometimes God's will isn't so clear in our lives, right? I mean, sometimes it's a bit ambiguous and we have to follow his leading as best we can. We don't always understand his plans or intentions, right? And I love what Alistair Begg said about this in a message. He said that the word perhaps is just part of our theology, right? We don't always have a firm grasp on God's plan, on God's intentions. We can't understand him, quite frankly. We can try, but we're never going to succeed in fully understanding God. So perhaps is certainly part of our theology. We can't separate it from our theology. There's certain things we can know for sure, and certain things we have to say, maybe, perhaps, and so that's what Jonathan shows us here. He's stepping out in faith and saying, perhaps if we are faithful, the Lord will deliver us, right? Chapter 14, verse 7. His armor bearer said to him, do everything that is in your heart. Turn yourself to it, and here I am with you as your heart desires. Then Jonathan said, behold, we are going to cross over to the men and reveal ourselves to them. If they say, wait until we come down to you, then we will stand in our place and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, then we will go up. For the Lord has handed them over to us, and this shall be the sign to us. Now, can I just say, find yourself a friend like Jonathan's armor bearer, okay? I mean, this guy is a bro. This is a real dude. All right, you will not find a better example of a loyal friend anywhere. So, I mean, basically, Jonathan tells his buddy the plan. He's like, okay, the two of us alone. Hear me out, buddy. Okay, the two of us by ourselves are going to attack the entire Philistine army by ourselves. You in? You in, bro? And his armor bearer's just like, bet. Yeah, I mean, let's go, bro. I mean, if you fight, I fight. If you win, I win. If you die, I die. Let's go. We ride together. We die together. Bad boys for life, right? You get the idea. I hope I got that quote right. I think I saw that movie once, like 10 years ago. Anyway, so the Philistines are encamped on the high ground, kind of like a peninsular outcropping, I suppose. And there's a whole cliff face between Jonathan and the Philistines, right? There's a whole vertical climb between Jonathan and the Philistines. It's just one more disadvantage in front of him. And so Jonathan's plan basically is 100% dependent on God being on their side. If God's not on their side, they fail. This is all faith that he's stepping out in. And he says, if the Philistines look down on us from their place up on the cliff and ignore us, or they try to chase us, then it isn't God's will for us to fight, and we can go home. But he says, if the Philistines taunt us from the high ground, if they say, come up to us, then the Lord is with us and we cannot lose, right? So if they taunt us from the high ground, then that is our sign from God that we are blessed by God and we can go up to them and win. When the two of them revealed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines said, behold, Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have kept themselves hidden. So the men of the garrison responded to Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up to us and we will show you something. We got something for you. And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, Come up after me, for the Lord has handed them over to Israel. So what did the Philistines do? They mock Jonathan and his armor bearer and dare them. I triple dog dare you to come up the cliff and fight them. And that's exactly the sign from God that Jonathan was looking for, that he was expecting. Now, I just had this mental image of Jonathan. As soon as they start mocking him, he's just looking over to his armor bearer like, it's on now. We're going up. It's on. We got this. Verse 13. Then Jonathan climbed up on his hands and feet, with his armor bearer behind him. And the men fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer put some to death after him. Gentlemen, if you want to know the gold standard of masculinity, what it looks like, I give you Jonathan. Okay. I mean, they climb up the side of the cliff. No safety gear. Okay, no bungee cord, no color-coded hand grips like you're rock climbing inside of a gym, right? Just gritty, natural rock climbing on the side of a cliff. It is grueling. It's exhausting. I mean, if you've ever been rock climbing, you know how quickly your grip strength goes out, and that's with those soft, color-coded hand grips that they give you. Okay, this is actual rock climbing. It's a lot tougher. And the first thing to grow out is your grip strength. It is grueling work. And so all the while they are climbing up this cliff face, they're being taunted by the Philistines, who are watching them and waiting to strike at them the moment they reach the top, right? And so after probably at least 100 meters or so of climbing, I don't know, there was not a man alive who probably wouldn't be spent, right? But Jonathan reaches the top of the cliff, somehow avoids being skewered immediately, and then pulls out his sword in his completely exhausted grip and goes after the Philistines. And Jonathan just starts mowing these guys down all by himself, and his armor bearer is behind him like, this one you put down on the ground is still alive. I got him. Just, right. So it's teamwork here. Jonathan knocks him down. The armor bearer finishes them off. And so... And again, this is after both of them spent who knows how long climbing up the side of a cliff. I mean, my grip strength would be gone. I'm not sure how he's holding a sword at this point. Verse 14, now that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer inflicted was about 20 men within half a furrow in an acre of land. And there was a trembling in the camp, in the field, and among all the people, even the garrison and raiders trembled. And the earth quaked, so that it became a great trembling. So Jonathan almost single-handedly takes down 20 men with the sword, and that's, again, after he's worn out from climbing up the side of a cliff. I mean, do you know how hard it would be even to grip a water bottle after putting your grip strength through a workout like that? And yet here Jonathan is, sword in hand, besting 20 men by the power of God. I have to make that last part abundantly clear. That's an important detail. By the power of God. And it says, that first slaughter. So Jonathan wasn't done. He still had, this is just his warm-up. He's just getting in the groove here. All right, he still has 99,980 Philistines to go, give or take. But the Philistines in the camp saw him cut through 20 men like butter. And they freaked out. They freaked. They didn't know what to do. They're like, oh crap, we can't go anywhere near that guy. Like, and so they all got up and ran. And it says the earth quaked so that it became a great trembling. Now that is the sound of 100,000 men running away from one guy all at once. And when 100,000 feet are hitting the ground all at the same time, that's an earthquake. That's what's going on. Now, obviously, Jonathan is not going to kill every single one of these guys by himself, okay? But Jonathan is validating his statement of faith here. God is not restrained to save by one or by many, or by few, I should say. So he's not doing this for himself, all right, as his father might have done. Jonathan is doing this so that the Israelites may look at his courage and his effectiveness in battle and say, God must have done this. There can be no other explanation, right? Because there's no way you can watch one man take on an entire army after climbing up a mountain and win and not come to the conclusion, oh, God had a hand in this. Like, no. At some point, I don't care how much of a rationalist you are no longer rational if you think that one man did that by himself. Okay? I mean, just imagine reading stories like this and thinking, oh, the Bible's so boring. Give me a break. So now remember, Saul, during all of this, is sitting under the shade under the pomegranate tree, right? As all this is going down. And so his people are hiding in caves for fear of their enemies, and he, the king, is lounging around in the shade drinking pomegranate juice, not doing anything. And that is when Jonathan took the initiative. So now we return to the perspective of King Saul. Now Saul's watchmen in Gibeah of Benjamin looked up, and behold, the multitude dissolved. They went here and there. So Saul said to the people who were with him, look carefully now and see who has left us. And when they had looked, behold, Jonathan and his armor-bearer were not there. So Saul gets the update from his scouts, and they report, look, we don't know how to tell you this, or what to make of it, what's going on, but the enemy is running away. And it's complete chaos at their camp, and the Philistines are just scattering. And so Saul has to be wondering what the heck that's all about, because, again, he hasn't done anything yet, or at all. And now something's going down, so Saul's got to look busy. He's got to look like he's doing something here. And so he says, let's just count. And they discover that Jonathan and his armor-bearer are not with the army. Now, this has to be a sobering moment for Saul, as both a king and as a father. I mean, his son has gone and done something reckless, done something crazy, and his first thought is, okay, my son's at it again. He's being rebellious, and I need to rein him in. I need to discipline him. But, of course, Jonathan at least went out and did something. It was a bad situation, and Jonathan did something. His father, the king, is lounging around drinking mimosas. And so when the king was idle, the prince stepped up, as he ought to have done. All right, so as a father and a king, this is kind of probably creating some cognitive dissonance in Saul. Because on the one hand, his son's rebellious. On the other hand, his son's doing what he should have done. So this is probably not helping with Saul's jealousy issue that we talked about last time. With his son becoming popular with the people. Can't have that. But Saul hasn't done anything. His son did, and so now he looks bad. So that probably isn't helping with Saul's jealousy issue. Then Saul said to Ahijah, bring the ark of God here. For at that time the ark of God was with the sons of Israel. While Saul talked to the priests, the commotion in the camp of the Philistines continued and increased. So Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. So Saul had the priest bring out the Ark of the Covenant, and he began inquiring of the will of the Lord, if he should take his meager force to battle, or if he should just, wait around and keep doing what he's been doing, which is nothing. The enemy is in disarray, so he's basically asking, okay, do we take advantage of this or not? So he began to seek counsel from the Lord, but he began to feel the urgency of the situation, and he thought, you know what? Never mind. I've made it this far without consulting the Lord, and so let's just go. Let's just go do our thing. So, have you ever felt like things were just so urgent and hectic that you just couldn't be bothered to take a moment to pray? Right? Has your life ever been like that? We just feel like, okay, things are too hectic. I just don't have time to pray. I don't have time to get God involved. Yeah, sometimes the smallest things divert our attention from what really matters, right? Things that we think are urgent in the moment divert our attention in a huge way. And we often say that we don't have enough time to pray because, well, things are too chaotic, things are too fast-paced, things are too urgent, and that is precisely when prayer should be our highest priority. Okay, and I promise you this, you do not have time to not pray. Okay, I promise you that. No business is so urgent that you can't take God along with you. All right, things go a lot better when you have him involved, trust me. Verse 20, then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and came to the battle. And behold, every man's sword was against his fellow Philistine, and there was a very great confusion. Now, if you recall the cliffhanger at the end of chapter 13, the situation the Israelites found themselves in at the time was a hopeless one. Right? They were outnumbered. They were numbered only 600 men against many thousands, right? And they had no weapons or blacksmiths or proper armor, and the Philistines had iron weapons and iron armor and chariots and horsemen, right? So, again, against that, the Israelites had nothing. So the Israelites were outnumbered and outgunned to an impossibly desperate degree, just ridiculously. And now the Israelites show up to the enemy camp, and the Philistines are so confused, they're killing each other. And not only are the Philistines winning the battle for Israel, but they are dropping weapons and armor as they die. So now all the Israelites have to do is loot them and make a stockpile. Like, their troubles are over in this category. So see, God knows the end from the beginning, and his ways and plans are perfect. I mean, Jonathan could not have known exactly what would happen as a result of his acting out in faith and just acting on a little bit of faith, stepping out in faith. Jonathan couldn't have known what was going to happen, but God did. And so most of Israel, including Saul, saw the situation as hopeless, and they gave up. And they hid, and they waited to die. Including the king himself. He just waited under the pomegranate tree in the shade and thought, if I'm going to die, I might as well be comfortable first, right? So everyone, including Saul, saw the situation as hopeless, and they just gave up, and they resigned themselves to defeat. One man showed a little bit of faith, and God made a way. He made it happen. Now the Hebrews who were with the Philistines previously, POWs, right? Prisoners of war, who went up with them all around in the camp, even they also returned to be with the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. When all the men of Israel who had kept themselves hidden in the country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines had fled, they also closely pursued them in the battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle spread beyond Bethaven. And this is the point I want to make abundantly clear. Okay, so Jonathan's act of faith was astounding and admirable. Absolutely. We love to read about stuff like that. But most of us can get distracted by such things when we read this story. We can get distracted by the human side of things. We conclude that, okay, Saul is an example in this case for us for what not to do, who not to be like. And Jonathan is the example of how we want to behave, the kind of person we want to be. So the moral of the story is be a Jonathan and not a Saul. Well, see, that would be the lesson here if I was giving a worldly motivational speech or giving you a personality test, right? But that's not the point of this passage of Scripture. Okay, the point is captured at the end here in verse 23. So the Lord saved Israel. It does not say, so Jonathan saved Israel. For the Lord saved Israel. Jonathan did not win the battle. Okay, he didn't claim to have won the battle. Okay, it was him who confessed the Lord is not limited to saving either by many or by a few. Okay, the Lord in this case had saved by few, by Jonathan and his armor bearer. Okay, the Lord did the saving, but he allowed Jonathan to be a part of his work. Okay, it's kind of like when Jesus fed the 5,000, right? The disciples looked at the multitude, the thousands of people, and said, what can we do in the face of so many? Right? All we've got is 5 loaves and 2 fish that this youngster brought with him. We got 5 loaves and 2 fish. What can we do in the face of so many? But God can save by many or by a few. And just as with Jonathan, right? It wasn't the boy who fed the 5,000 people with the lunch he brought with him packed to save them from starvation. It wasn't the boy who saved them. That was Jesus. That was God. Okay, Jesus didn't need the boy's help to feed the people. Okay, this is the same God who created the universe from nothing. Okay, a bit of food wasn't the problem. He could have created bread from nothing. He could have made it rise from the ground. But Jesus blessed the youngster, the boy, by allowing him to be a part of the miracle, to be a part of God's work. right? He does the work, but he allows us to be a part of it. Okay, the same was true of Jonathan. Okay. The Lord did the saving, but he allowed Jonathan to be among the few by whom God saved. Okay, so the temptation for all of us is to feel like we're the ones in control. To say, well, I can handle this myself. I got this. I've got this. I can do this. I'll just white knuckle it. I'll pull myself up by my own bootstraps and I can handle this myself. That's the temptation. That's what we saw Saul do. Where did that lead him? In chapter 14, we saw that led him to give up. Saul tried to carry it all himself by his own strength, and he gave up. He resigned himself to defeat. He lay under the shade of the pomegranate tree and just waited for the Philistines to finish him off. He was literally suicidal. Okay? He was literally just that depressed and hopeless. And that's where trying to do it all by ourselves gets us. Trying to carry it all ourselves gets us to exactly where Saul was in this scene. So are we going to be stubborn and play it safe? Just wait around for the enemy to come get us and see how we fare by ourselves? Or will we be bold enough and reckless enough to look up and say, help? I mean, I think that's a pretty good strategy right there. Help. Very simple. And effective. I think Jonathan understood that he was incapable of saving himself, much less his nation, by his own strength. I think Jonathan understood this. We're all incapable of saving ourselves. That's why we need Jesus. That's why he came, right? We can't white knuckle our way to salvation. We can't, no matter how stubborn we are, no matter how strong-willed we are, we cannot get this done by ourselves. We have to be bold enough to surrender completely to the will and grace of Christ. That's true for all of us. And while I'm sure is plenty more I can say, I'm going to leave it right there until next week. So I hope you got something out of this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. God bless. Have a great week.